How's my lighting? Pretty good?
Pretty good. I don't see the pen. Oh, the pencil's in a little bit of a. It's not lit. Oh,
Right
is it
here.
over there? Oh,
Right here.
hold on. Oh, there we go. I just had to make the screen wider. Oh,
Now,
I
and hey,
didn't
welcome to
realize.
the Transformational Podcast. Chris is trying to figure out where the pencil is. It's right here. And, which
Just
means
making
that,
sure they didn't move it. I mean, that would be weird.
no, they hadn't
Uh,
moved it yet.
okay.
Although if you go look at it, it's made up of a bunch of different colors of limestone or
Mm-hmm.
of, whatever rock. And it's because the quarries that they pulled it out of as they were building the pencil, also known as the Washington Monument. It came out of multiple quarries. And so as you look up it, you'll see that. And the other thing you'll see, Chris, is you'll see that it has what looks like maybe some repairs. And I'm not sure if you remember, but we had an earthquake up here sometime in around 2011 timeframe.
Yeah.
And the reason why I remember is I was in the middle of test pilot school when that happened. And I'm downstairs, and all of a sudden the screen or the picture on the screen, projection starts moving left and right. And we're like, I think that's an earthquake. I think we should get out of the building. And then the instructor in absolutely classic military style is like, no, we don't need to go anywhere. It'll be fine. And of course the duty comes downstairs and is like, what are y'all still doing in the building? There was an earthquake. Get out.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's pretty funny. So anyway, yep, there's the pencil. It's right
I didn't
there.
know you'd been in an earthquake before. That's fun.
It was
I mean,
honestly,
I don't know
it
if
was
fun's the right word, but that's interesting, I guess I should say.
it was anticlimactic. I'm not gonna lie, it was anticlimactic. So
Were you all
before
shook
we
up?
jump, I was all shook up. Oh
Hey,
my
Robert,
gosh.
do you
What?
know what is, this is actually not a joke. Do you know what is written on the top of the Washington Monument?
What?
The Latin words Laus Deo. Do you know? And it's on the east face of it, so facing the rising sun. And
I didn't know that, but I'm fairly
do you know what
certain
it
you looked this
translates?
up. I'm fairly certain you
No,
just looked this up.
well, I read about it like maybe a couple of
Oh,
weeks
okay.
ago, and I've been
All right,
meaning
go
to tell
ahead.
you.
What does it mean?
It faces the east, so the rising sun, and it means praise be to God in Latin.
Really?
So there you go. Yeah. I thought that was
Fantastic.
interesting.
Praise be
I
to God.
know.
I know,
You thought
right?
I'm over here just trying to. I don't know why you don't take me serious, Robert. I'm all serious all the time. Golly, I'm
Yeah,
trying
you
to
are.
lay down
Oh my
some truth here.
goodness. Yeah, you are. Well, you know what? I think you and I have both been looking forward to this podcast all day. We didn't get as far as we wanted to yesterday. And before we jump in, I think we were joking about you said you had some stuff that was running through your. Should we talk about that? The stuff that was running through your kid's family, and I was joking about how if I
Oh
tell
yeah,
my kid,
yeah. So
go ahead.
some of y'all have kids at my son's age, middle schoolish, and the thing that they are coming home saying quite a bit these days is Tuesday. What's up, brother? What's up, brother? And it's at the first couple times it was like, oh, that sounds funny. Now it's like, oh my gosh, I'm ready for the
It's
next
like
thing.
stop.
That's all the time.
Yeah.
That's all the time. So.
But then I told
but
you,
what's
I
really
said it-
funny
Go
is
ahead.
that's my kids. All right, they're gonna be
Yeah.
in the middle of whatever everyone's doing, and it is what it is. And so Robert's like, I've never heard that before. That's not something my kids.
Because the way I could get them to stop, like a true way to get them to stop, is to tell them everyone else is doing it, and they would absolutely just stop. Like, nope, we're not doing it anymore. That's like that's
so
an easy way to get them to stop.
Funny. And that, my friend, is a great picture of my brother and my childhoods growing up.
It really is, right?
It really is.
Right?
It's so
my
funny.
gosh.
Oh,
so
gosh.
hey, friends, if y'all are still with us, after 5 minutes of us coming in hot, honestly having a good time. If you're still with us, welcome to the Transformational Podcast. We're glad you're here.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be talking about Rehoboam tonight. We didn't get as far as we wanted when we were talking about Solomon. And if you go look at the story in Kings, First Kings, you'll notice that we transitioned from Solomon to Rehoboam. And Rehoboam is a king who comes right after Solomon. And honestly, he's a fulfillment of God's prophecy over Solomon to say, hey, I'm going to pull the kingdom. Basically, the kingdom's not going to continue down your line. I'm going to leave a little bit part of it, which would be Judah and Benjamin. Am I right on that one, Chris?
Yes.
And then the 10 tribes of the north. Well, Rehoboam comes in. He takes over after Solomon. He's one of Solomon's kids. And yeah, let's talk about that, because I think we can learn a lot from Rehoboam, and honestly, not the learn a lot. We should do it like him, but learn a lot as in that's not an example to be followed. So I know you wanted to talk about it. I'll let you go, and then I'll try to guide the discussion, because this is some good stuff.
So this comes from just to be clear, this comes from just some time reading last week and some things I wrote down, just as things that stood out to me and thoughts I had because of that. I only say that because this isn't like a Bible study that we put together for this. And my point is that, man, as you study the Word daily, God will do stuff like this. He'll help you see how this applies to real life. And so really that's the point. That's the point of this podcast, is just saying, man, this is just talking through how God transforms us daily. And so I want to dive into one of the things that he, showed me. And it's there in chapter 12 of 1 Kings, that after Solomon died, then Rehoboam became the next king, and he went to Shechem, where all Israel had gathered to make him king. And when Jeroboam, son of Nebat, heard this, he returned from Egypt, for he had fled to Egypt to escape King Solomon. He'd gone there because he had enacted justice for his sister, and basically ran away from Solomon since then. Anyway,
yeah, it's a long story. Bottom line is Jeroboam, also a son of Solomon, but a son in exile. But a son in exile because of sin that he committed, or maybe some questionable decisions. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So it says the leaders of Israel summoned him, and Jeroboam and the whole assembly of Israel went to speak with Rehoboam. And this is the conversation. Your father was a hard master. They said, lighten the harsh labor demands and heavy taxes that your father imposed on us, then we'll be your loyal subjects. Rehoboam replied, give me 3 days to think this over, then come back for my answer. So the people went away. Then King Rehoboam discussed the matter with the older men who had counseled his father Solomon. What is your advice, he asked. How should I answer these people? The older counselors replied, if you're willing to be a servant of these people today and give them a favorable answer, they will always be your loyal subjects. But Rehoboam rejected the advice of the older men, and instead asked the opinion of the young men who had grown up with him and were now his advisors. What is your advice? He asked them. How should I answer these people who want me to lighten the burdens imposed by my father? The young men replied, this is what you should tell those complainers who want a lighter burden. My little finger is thicker than my father's waist. Yes, my father laid heavy burdens on you, but I'm going to make them heavier. My father beat you with whips, but I will beat you with scorpions. 3 days later, Jeroboam and all the people returned to hear Rehoboam's decision, just as the king had ordered. But Rehoboam spoke harshly to the people, for he rejected the advice of the older counselors and followed the counsel of his young advisors. He told the people, my father laid heavy burdens on you, but I'm going to make them even heavier. My father beat you with whips, but I will beat you with scorpions. So the king paid no attention to the people. This turn of events was the will of the Lord, for it fulfilled the Lord's message to Jeroboam, son of Nebat, through the prophet Ahijah from Shiloh. And actually he goes on and talks about how it led to the split of the kingdom, what had been predicted by the prophet to Solomon. Now, here's what jumped out at me, Robert. So
all right, hit me.
He becomes king. He has this position, and he has these older men who've been his father's advisors. And they say, hey, here's the deal. Now, the people come to him and say, hey, lighten the load, make it easier, and we'll be your loyal subjects. And maybe they're trying to do that deal like when you get a substitute teacher and you're trying to, work a deal with the substitute so you don't have to do all the work that the teacher left or whatever, right? I was always trying to work that angle, right? And maybe
I'm experiencing that right now. I'm experiencing
Yeah.
that right now in my current job. I've only been there 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and so everybody comes to me with the answers, with the questions that they've already gotten no is the answer from someone else. And so
Yeah.
I'm now wise enough to go and ask, hey, have you already gotten this question, and what was your answer? Because you, to a certain extent, you have to back the play of your team, because your
Right.
team had a reason typically to say no.
Right. So that's essential. They're coming, and he's probably feeling like, "Hey, I don't want you to play me." So he asked the advisors, which is a good idea. His
Yeah,
father's
that's a great
advisors
idea.
say, "You know what? If you'll lighten the load, you'll basically earn the favor of the people. It's not a bad move. It's a really good idea." And he rejects the counsel of the older men and goes to the counsel of those he grew up with. Now, I was thinking about this the other day. Is that um, who is speaking into your life? Who have
Yeah.
you given permission to speak into your life? And when they do, how do you receive it? Because here's the thing. Things may have gone differently. Now, obviously, it was the will of the Lord that this happened this way, but it's obvious what happened. He rejected the influence of the older people, and there are generational divides between generations all too often that are just natural. But here's what I've seen happen: people will go to someone and say, "Hey, will you mentor me?" Well, that can mean a number of different things. You're going
Yeah.
to go through a book, going to talk about what does that mean? Well, here's what I would say it's just talking about life, getting to know them, building the relationships. Because the only difference here is that he was friends with these other guys. He maybe not wouldn't have been friends with his father's advisors, but they
Yeah. I
clearly
want to
had the
jump into
wisdom. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to jump in. I want to jump into mentorship, but I do have a question. It's something that's always, when it comes to this scripture, I've thought about it. Sorry, I just kicked something on the ground. If you heard that, it's something that's always, it's made me really wonder. Like, I look at this and I'm like, why did he reject the counsel of the old folks, and why did he take the the counsel, in this case, the counsel I'm air quoting, of his friends? What do you think it was that caused him to reject the folks who had basically been advising his father? I have always wondered, like, what was it about that interaction where he said, you know what, no, actually, I'm going to go with my friends? Because I'll be honest, Chris, when I look at this, I'm like, you're an idiot. Like,
Yeah.
clearly what you got advised was absolutely bad advice. So what was he, do you think, that made him, aside from it was the will of the Lord was playing this out,
Yeah.
um, but what do you think in his heart? What do you think in his mind? And I think it's important to recognize this, because it can be a trap for ourselves. Why we end
Yeah.
up rejecting, frankly, rejecting good advice.
Well, I think part of it is it's a lack of humility to receive counsel from people who've gone before you,
Mm,
because you think, well, your ways are outdated and you don't really know how things are these days, and you know what, just because we've always done it that I mean, we can come up with all the reasons, and when things have changed. You don't really know the whole story. You don't know the whole situation. I think here I see a lot of pride involved because he goes to
yeah.
his buddies and go, "What do y'all think?" Right?
Times are different, right? Times are
Yeah,
different.
times are different. I'm grown now. I don't need anyone telling me what to do. Right? In there a little bit of a resistance sometimes of feeling like you're not my dad. You
Hey,
can't tell me what to do.
even when you are their dad, sometimes you get the. I'm not going to name names because I'm not throwing my kids under the bus on the podcast. But every now and then, you give advice, good sage fatherly advice, and because they think they have it under control. In other words, they got that boxed
Yeah,
up. They like, no, I don't need that advice. And so
yeah,
sometimes they make it harder on themselves. But I have wondered if maybe part of it was, and what do you think? Do you think part of it was because it was his friends that he grew up with, that he was trying to, I don't know, maintain some sort of some sort of reputation, or some sort of good standing with? Do you think it was that it was more of a, I don't know, like a peer kind of thing, as opposed to a wise advice, sage counsel thing?
yeah. I mean, look at just look at today. It's nothing's new under the sun, according to
Right.
King
Yeah.
Solomon. Um, nothing's new under the sun. It's the same thing that happens these days. Is um, well, you begin to get around certain influences, certain friends. That's the voice that is in your ear the most, right? Those are
Yeah.
the influences and so now you have a certain level of reputation to maintain with them, certain level of you're building your own name with them. I mean, they're his young advisors, um, but the difference is between the young advisors and the old advisors is life experience and too often we keep thinking, well, I've got new information, I've got better ways, I've got, we're cutting a new path, a better path. The next generation will always try to cut a better path than the previous one did.
Yeah.
I don't
I
know of
wonder.
anywhere that and honestly, there's nothing wrong with improving and getting better. The problem is when pride gets involved and we go, but we don't need y'all's input. And now here's the other side. The other side is that an older generation often speaks in and instead of trying to learn from the next generation and listen to and hear them out and try to understand and meet them where they are, so often they treat them like, come on, y'all are being idiots. This is the way it should be, and it should always be. Well, that's a great way to influence
Yeah.
someone. That's how
That's a good way to
it's
get people not to listen to you. That's for
yeah.
sure. Yeah, I do think that in this case, and this is why I've always thought about this one pivotal moment is I think because I think about myself, right? And I'm like, okay, so I listen to old advice, I listen to maybe to some younger advice. And then how do I take those two pieces? And sometimes they can be diverse pieces of advice, completely contradictory. How do I take those and then mesh them together and mesh them up? And I think that's the biggest challenge to go at. And in this case, I don't think Rehoboam, um, I don't think he approached the challenge seriously. I think he just went straight to following the people that he hung out with and the people that he
Right.
grew up with.
Well, at the same time, I also don't know that there was that great of a relationship between Solomon and his sons, just based on the narrative here. So,
I mean, he had 700 wives. I don't know what the problem
yeah,
is.
yeah, there might have been a little disconnect between dad and son. And so
Who
when
knows?
dad's advisor comes and says, well, here's the way here's what you should do, he's
Yeah.
probably going, well, okay. The way they would say it today is, okay, boomer, right? You may not understand that.
That hurts.
Do you understand that?
Oh, I understand that. I mean, I reject it. I won't use it.
I'm not calling you a boomer. You're Gen X, okay? But I'm just saying that would be the response. So am I. But that would be the response in today's culture is there is still that going on. And that's why I come back to the question of who do you have speaking into your life? Now, here's the thing. When it comes to mentoring, it is such a weird deal because I've had people ask me to mentor. I've asked other people to mentor me. And I think I've come to a realization about something. There's some professional mentoring that is a thing, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to life mentoring, it's about relationships. It's not about, hey, sit down and give me the 5 steps to being a great pastor. There's not such thing. I mean, that you could, but they're broad strokes, and it's not going to answer all your questions per se, right? But what mentoring I think probably looks like is walking in life and building relationships intentionally with people who are years ahead of you, years down the road in the journey. And it's not about, hey, I have an agenda every time we meet. It's about, hey, tell me about life. Tell me what's going on. Hey, here's what's going on in my world. What's going on in hey, what do you think about this? Have you ever experienced? And you just build a relationship so that when those questions of life come up, you can just say, hey, what are your thoughts on this? Or if you're completely upset about something, you're able to sit down and go, man, this is what's going on, and I'm so frustrated about it, and whatever you have, and they're able to go, hey, have you ever thought about? But you're inviting them into your world to give you advice along the way, because here's the deal: you're inviting people into your world whether you're doing it on purpose or not. And here's what I mean: you're getting influenced somewhere. You're getting
Yeah.
influenced by your coworkers. You're getting influenced by your Twitter feed, by your or X feed, whatever it is, Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is. You're giving other people a voice to your heart, to your thoughts, to your mind. In most of the time, if you're seeking it on social media, it is probably not someone 10 to 15 or 20 years down the road ahead of you. It's your
Yeah. Hey,
peers.
I got a
It's your
question for you.
peers.
I got a question for you.
Yeah.
Looking back on your life, who was, if you can think about it, who was the most unassuming, non-named? In other words, you didn't establish a mentorship. Who was your mentor that mentored you, maybe without you even knowing it until later in life? Where you like, hey, I was mentored by this person. Can you
You,
think of someone?
it's hard for me
And
not to think directly of Mike Thomas.
yeah, I
Um,
know, right? Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, yeah.
So, who was
Be-
Mike Thomas? For those
Mike
who don't know
Thomas was
him.
our student pastor growing up, and he never said, and he really never set himself up to be our mentor. He just set himself up to be our friend and to care about us. And he showed up at our stuff, showed up in our life, um, and he was just one of those guys that was there.
What did you like? So when you were working with him, or when you were under his tutelage, and granted, he's a youth pastor, but you didn't say, "Hey, would you be my mentor?" What were
Yeah.
some of the things that you either took to him or learned from him, or whatever? I mean, obviously, youth pastor. I have one that's a little different, but also in during that same time period. But
Well, for
what
me,
that look?
it's
What did
mostly
that look
just
like? Yeah.
yeah. It was just time together. It was time, hanging out. He'd have me help him do stuff at church. We'd do stuff. You know, we'd have conversations. We had lunch together at times. It was just time together, and that's the thing. There was no written curriculum of I'm going to mentor you, and once again, that's fine. I'm not saying there's a place for that, but I'm just saying
No, no, I
the kind
gotcha.
of life mentoring you need. It's about relationships, not a program. And so, who
Yeah.
was yours?
So I'm actually thinking of, and maybe you remember Zach Weems.
Oh
Do you remember
yeah.
Zach Weems?
Oh,
Okay, so
of
Zach
course I
Weems
do. I worked
for
for that guy.
I know I did too. Okay, so
Yeah.
Zach Weems, for the folks who don't know who he is, Zach and Becky Weems. Actually, Becky worked in the youth group. Zach did not. Zach actually hired Chris and I, and he would take us out working on his farm, and we would do farm work in the summer, etc. And I would follow him around. But the things that I learned under Zach's tutelage, whether Zach even knows that, and maybe I'll 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 tip him, say, hey, listen to this because we talked about you,
Yeah.
or not. But his work ethic, his character, whether it was in the spotlight or out of the spotlight, his love and devotion for God, and then ultimately for Becky, like all of that right there spoke volumes. And I enjoyed time hanging out with him, goofing off. Honestly, Chris, if you can recall those days, you're doing fence lines, you're doing uh, all kinds of farm stuff that a lot of our folks won't
Yeah.
appreciate.
Yep.
But it was that time spent with him that I think I learned a ton under him on how to be, what it's like to be a follower of Christ. And I'll be honest, I don't think we opened the Bible once.
Yeah. No, it was
We
just
definitely talked about God, but I don't know that
yeah.
we opened the Bible once.
And it's just time together. And I say this. I now am intentional about building. There's people that I try to have lunch with. That I try to have now. Now here's the thing: if you're an older guy listening to this and you go, "Man, I'd love to have this kind of relationship with someone," it might be as much of just saying, "Hey, let me take you to lunch. What's going on? Hey, I'm just and because I think that the other side of that is people are going, just bring me your questions. I'll answer them. I'll be the wise sage. I'm just going to tell you, I don't know that people know what questions to ask. I
Yeah.
think it's just, hey, we're struggling through life and we're not even sure what a questions to ask. If we did, we'd probably just Google it anyway. And so it's one of those
Right.
things.
I
It's
know.
like, it's like we just need someone to help us through the struggle. And in that is where that relationship happens. You have that opportunity. And it reminds me of Proverbs 13:20 that says, um, let's go to 20. There it is. Walk with the wise and become wise, associate with fools and get in trouble, or walk with the wise and becomes wise, or a companion of fools will suffer harm, is the way one version says it. I think the NIV says it that way, that they will suffer harm. Now, I think that is such a great picture of what we just read.
Yeah.
Right? Walk if you walk with the wise, you're intentional about who you surround yourself with and the relationships that you are building. And Robert, people have always thought, man, that's for teenagers, that's for kids. No, it is 100% for adults. I see it all the freaking time. All right.
I know.
It is one of those things of like, yeah, the reason you struggle to walk with Christ is because look who you're walking with. Like,
Yeah.
you've got to learn to start saying, you know what? I'm going to intentionally put myself in a men's group. I'm going to intentionally put myself in a life group. I'm going to intentionally serve at church so I can surround myself with these guys. I'm going to be intentional about scheduling breakfast or lunch with this guy. And it's no agenda. It's not, hey, let's have a Bible study. It's like, hey, I just want to get to know you, want to hear what goes on in your world, and just, get to know you a little bit. And then go
That
from
was,
there.
yeah. That was one of
But
the
but
most fun things about our small group when we were, had young marrieds together. Is it was the after hours, so we did have time to discuss whatever God's word was, whether it was about marriage tools or your relationship with God or your whatever relationship. It was the after hours when we were like, hey, what are you guys, you know, how's things going? What's going on? And people would share things, and Hillary and I would we would say things like, well, we can't tell you exactly how to live your situation. When we walked through this, not saying we went through it perfectly. These are the lessons we learned, and this is what we did, and this is probably what we wouldn't do again. And so, yeah, how it is, right?
yeah.
We're not perfect, and we look back and go, yeah, probably could have done that different. And it's just sharing that thing. Real quick before you jump into your next scripture, one of the other things that I think is important is when you go to these lunches, if folks are coming up on something, the question, I think some of the best questions to ask is, what are you expecting? Like, what is it that you think? What are you expecting to happen? Like, what is it that you're forecasting? Because that gets really inside the heart of somebody, in the head of somebody, on, hey, I think this is going to happen, or I think that's going to happen, or I'm worried, or I'm not worried, or whatever. And you have the opportunity to say, hey, this is something to watch for. It happened with me. It doesn't mean it'll happen with you. As a matter of fact, it may not, but it's just something I saw when I was in something similar. It's not the same thing, but it was something similar. And so
Yeah.
you have that opportunity to, I don't know, speak life into somebody's situation without them really even realizing that you're doing mentoring. I like to say I mentored, this was back in a couple jobs ago. I imparted mentorship without them knowing I was mentoring them.
Right. Well, and man, I need it, and other people need it.
Yeah.
But I think at this point in my life, I realized it's really about relationship as much as it is
Yes, it
anything
is.
else. It's
Mm-hmm.
about just being around godly people, and that's what I'm saying. It's not just successful people. I think sometimes people look and go, "Wow, that person must be is really successful because of their net worth or what their house looks like or whatever." And it's like, wait. Why don't you find someone who has the faith that you hope to have one day?
That's the
Like,
key right there. Say that
right?
again. What are you looking for? You're looking for
Someone who
the
has the
faith.
faith that you hope to have one day. All right. And
Mm-hmm.
if you don't see it around you, the beauty about, um, podcast is that you can find it through a podcast, and it may not be that you get to build a relationship, but you're at least putting a voice in your life that is speaking truth and wisdom into your life, whether you know them personally or not. I would like to say that there's several people who mentored me along the way, and they don't even know my name, but it's just because I was like, man, I need it. I need voices of wisdom in my life. And so I latched on to some podcasts of leadership along the way, and especially in ministry leadership. And it's been incredibly helpful just as a young pastor. But now I have the ability, and actually in my last church, it was amazing. God brought those people to me, to my life. It was
Yeah. Yep.
Ryan George. He's not that much older than me, but man, ahead of me just in leadership. And so learned so much. Guy named Jim Wise. and he's quite a bit older than me. He's closer to our parents' age, but man, he was one of my best friends out there. We ate lunch almost every week at Mamacita's. It was so good. All right,
Yeah.
not just the food, but the time together and the way that he just influenced. And then uh, one of my friends there, Chris. Why did I just forget Chris's last name? He's gonna. I hope he doesn't listen to this.
Are you looking around? Did you write it down somewhere? Is that why you're looking around the desk? Because you think if you look around, you can find Chris's last
what's
name.
your last name, dude? Anyway, I'll think of it when I'm not trying to. I just have a brain fart. Dadgummit. I'm sorry, Chris. But just these guys, he's he was 15 years ahead of me in life, and he would tell you I've made all the mistakes. I can help you avoid those mistakes.
It's funny, Chris. I was talking to somebody while you're looking up his last name because I know this is really bothering you, and you're gonna find it. I had actually somebody, even in my profession, they were chatting with me about something, and they said, "Hey, when," and they were kind of spelling some things out, and it was interesting, Chris. My initial reaction to it was, "Yeah, I know." I like, why are you telling me this? I know what you're talking about. I don't need you to tell me this. And it was interesting. It doesn't happen all the time. So I'm sharing a moment of success. I'm not sharing the normal moment, which the normal moment is to dismiss and move on. Right. But in this moment, the Lord stopped me and said, "Hey, knucklehead, listen up. Like, stop, listen up." And so it was funny because in my soul, I was like, okay, hang on. If they're telling me something, even if I may think I know it, I need to like quiet my heart, quiet my head. I need to listen. And then better yet, ask the Lord, what are you trying to tell me through this person? Because that actually might be what's really happening. Not that person is mentoring me or giving me something that I need, but that the Lord might be speaking through someone because he knows there's something that I need to hear.
Right.
And I need to stop. I need to slow down, quiet my heart, quiet my soul. And as I told myself, all right, Robert, stop, listen. Mm-hmm. You need to listen. And so I think that's an important piece of this.
Chris Cole, I apologize. I know your last name. I have no clue why. I could not get Cole in my head. Anyway, but anyway, that being said, these guys, I mean, they poured into me. And I'm grateful for it. But it wasn't like, we have 5 lessons we want to teach you about life. It was, we did life together. And along the way, they just asked me, hey, how's it going with this? How's it going with that? And I would talk through my struggles. I would ask them, I'm navigating this. What do you think? But it came through relationship. Now, here's the deal. Now there's some guys that I'm seeking out because I go, man, when it comes to faith and where I'm going in the future, just with ministry and things like that, I'm like, I need these relationships just to continue to help sharpen me and what's going down the future. My father-in-law is an incredible guy to just have lunch with and spend time with. He's ahead of me in ministry, ahead of me in life. And like I said, it's not like I have 17. All right, these are the questions I need you to answer. It's just, we're doing life together. We're getting to know each other better and better. He knows the ebb and flow. And so he's able to just go, hey, have you ever thought about, hey, you don't have to do it this way, but this was something that I saw when I was in that situation. And I listen. And I will say this, 20 years ago, when my father was pouring into me as a student pastor, I didn't listen. And it was a pain, right? And did not go as well as it should have. And it's just amazing the difference when you begin to intentionally put yourself in those relationships.
Right.
So that you can receive. It just changes things.
So can we close off the story with Rehoboam? Not everybody knows the story with Rehoboam, and then maybe we can transition back to some like practical, we'll call it just some practical things as we kind of wrap up. Because I think it's important for folks who are reading the scripture and when you get into it. And Chris, I read like 4 days on Saturday because I got into a story that I just couldn't put down. I was like, I got to read the next part of the story. You got to read the next part of the story. Even today. But so I don't want folks leaving with, okay, they got really, Rehoboam got really bad advice. What happened next? Some people know, but
do you have it?
I do
I've
have it.
turned my. All right, go ahead, because I've turned the
I have
page
it.
and I'd have to go back to it.
No, I got it. I got it. It says, when all Israel saw that the king refused to listen to them, they answered the king. All right, so he's taken bad advice. The Israelites, he's responded to the Israelites, as Chris said earlier, saying that, my father scourged you with whips, I'll scourge you with scorpions. So he's spoken very harshly to the people. And here's what the people have to say in return. What share do we have in David? What part in Jesse's son? To your tents, O Israel, look after your own house, O David. So the Israelites went home. And at that moment, the kingdom was fractured. It took an entire kingdom, the most powerful kingdom, literally, and rich kingdom on the planet, and it fractured it into two pieces, the
Yeah,
southern and the northern. And it was all from one human. Now, this was part of God's plan, but it was all from one person listening to bad advice and listening,
yeah.
taking the advice of his friends. And so, back to Chris's point, and I think this is really, a key piece is, who have you given permission to speak into your life?
So
And
what's
Chris, from a
interesting?
practical aspect, you go.
Yeah, I just saw this play out not too long ago. A guy went through something, and he began to call around. He made some poor life choices and began to call around, and he was talking to one of the people from his life group, his men's group, and just saying what was going on. Talked to some other people from the church, but basically, it was almost like he was looking for somebody who would help him justify his sin. It's
Mm,
like he was looking for. He just was looking for someone to say, "No, I get it. That's you know what, it's all right. You can do that." And what's great is I know that the men that are in his life, they probably are not the people who are going to do that. At least the ones from
yeah,
his church. And I love that
yeah,
because I need those people in my life. This is not a expose on him. It's me saying, man, what I learned from that is I need the kind of guys in my life who are ahead of me in life that when I call them and go, man, I'm really ticked off about this. And so I did this, they can look at me and go, hey, that was really dumb. And you don't need to do that. All right. That's going to ruin your life. That's going to ruin your family's life. It's going to ruin your ministry. You need to take a step back and you need to go repent. You need to go do what you need to do to make things right. Like you need to turn back around because really you're in the wrong and you need
yeah.
to confess and be real about it. And so
So you
I
need to
just say
find
it because,
somebody, yeah, somebody who can tell you to take a step back. Somebody who tells you
yeah,
you can, basically someone who can tell you stink.
yeah, and you know that they love you, right? Because
Yeah,
anybody
and no,
can
yeah,
tell you
absolutely,
stink,
out of love.
right?
You're right.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
and that you know that man, if I screw up and I tell them I screw up, that they're gonna tell me, yeah, you screwed up. I get it right, and I'm here with you. I'm gonna walk with you.
yeah,
I'm not gonna
yeah. I'm
leave you
here
in the
with you.
dust because you screwed things up. But
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So I would just say, man, the last verse I would think about is 1 Corinthians 15 that says, "Don't be fooled. Bad company corrupts good morals." 1 Corinthians 15:33. Yeah, don't be fooled by those who say such things. Bad company corrupts good character. And they're actually talking about a spiritual issue where people are being fooled and deceived and basically not understanding, um, you know, the resurrection at the time, and that was really the heart behind it. But but it remains true. Who are you allowing to speak into your life? Who are you
yeah,
inviting, not and allowing, right, to speak into your life? Is it the kind of people that have faith that you hope to have one day? Because if that's it, then you got the right people speaking into your life.
yeah. So you got to find those people who can tell you stink. You got to go out and make time for them to have lunches, make time for them to hang out with them. You need to not just make time for them, but you need to be real with them, right? You need to tell them this is what's going on and this is what I think. And then you need to basically stop and listen. And not just listen from the perspective of what are these folks telling me, because um, they could be the young folks who are giving advice. You don't really know that. You should take that all in. You should listen to them from the perspective of, if you have the Holy Spirit, You
Yeah.
have a leg up on all of this stuff, and
Yep.
you have to stop and say, okay, what are they telling me? And Lord, what are you telling me through them? And I think
Yep.
that's practical mentorship. It's not the type of mentorship that, like you said, takes you through some sort of professional mentorship. But there's a thing, I've personally done that, Chris. I've actually personally done professional mentorship. But what we're talking about spiritual mentorship and being sage advice to somebody who's not that far behind us. And so if you were to, I hate to close it up because honestly, I'm having a good time and we could
Yeah.
probably keep going, but we do need to
Well,
wrap it up. Chris, last week's podcast was really long. So let's
it
try to bring
was,
this one back.
which it worked out really
Um,
well for me for my workout because I made it all the way
did
through the
it?
workout on
Okay.
it. Yeah. So
Fantastic. So
actually,
if we're
quit
gonna,
about 10 minutes early, but anyway.
yeah. So if you're gonna wrap it up, let's hear it. What do you
Here's what I
got?
say for older guys, man, be willing to step in and be humble enough just to build relationships with someone behind you that doesn't know, and not with the attitude of I've got a few things to teach you.
Yeah.
I can solve your
Mm-hmm.
problems for you, but just hey, I just want to walk here alongside you and encourage
Mm-hmm.
you. And young guys, be be willing to invite those guys into your world to get to know them, not think that they're just too old to understand life as it is. Maybe it's that you don't see it with as much life experience as they do, and that's why they see it the way they see it. And probably there's something that we can learn from them. I'm truly believe there is.
Yeah. Amen. Love it.